Hi, Christy.
Hi, Jeff.
We're recording now.
The many hours of conversation you and I have had, we've had probably half of them that haven't been recorded.
You know what we should do? We should start a podcast.
You think? Let's call it The Why and the Buy.
All right. Do one thing every day that scares you. Anonymous. If it's quoted to Anonymous, I think you should take credit for it.
Yeah. Okay, great. Are we recording?
Oh yeah, we recorded that.
Oh, sorry, I'm like waiting for some cue. You're listening to the Why and the Buy podcast. My name is Christy Walters, and I'm here joined by Jeff Bajorek. And we always have lots of fun when we do these recordings.
We don't have a red light. We need a red light.
Right.
I mean, there's a little blip in the corner of the screen there, but if you don't quite catch it, then you could get caught off guard. That's fun. If you're not having fun, you're not doing it right.
That's right. Exactly.
I mean, that's at the key, I think, of what we both do. And that I love doing what I do. And the people that work around me or work with me or, they know that I have fun. And I think that, what we do is difficult. What everybody does out there is difficult. I don't care if you're pulling a lever on an assembly line for 8 hours a day. That gets difficult after a while. Mm-hmm. The fun's got to be at the core of it. And I think it's important today to talk about fun, especially if you listen to the last episode of our series here, where we really talked about the importance of having a tremendous positive attitude or a tremendously positive attitude. And it rolls right into our discussion today about fear, but fear can be fun.
It can be. It can also be terrifying, right?
Well, so how are you going to
be redundant?
Yes, and that's exactly the point. How are you going to approach it? And we've got a lot to talk about today, Christy. We're talking about fear. We're talking about fear as a motivator. We're talking about fear as an inhibitor. We're talking about fear of success. We're talking about fear of failure. We're talking about fear of inactivity. We're talking about fear of activity. We've got so many things to go through.
I know.
I'm getting ready.
I know you were excited for this topic. I think I am as well. It's amazing how often with coaching clients, the topic of fear comes up. And in a lot of cases, it's helping people face their fears so that once you name it, it kind of becomes a little less of an issue, right? So,
That's so good. It's funny. I literally I was talking to someone the other day and I said, the fear is this big, scary monster in the closet until you open up the closet and you find it's Sully and Mike Wazowski.
That's right.
Monsters Incorporated.
That's right. Exactly. And that's a great analogy. It's a great picture to bring up, and because it does make us laugh at ourselves. And oftentimes fear of public speaking, for example. And I see this all the time at NSA meetings, not so much at NSA meetings, but certainly at Toastmaster meetings, people who are terrified to walk into a Toastmasters meeting because of the thing that you are supposed to be there to help, which is they're afraid to speak in front of other people. And I'm like, you know what, you're gonna be afraid. You are just gonna be afraid until you face it head on. And the only thing you can do is stand up there in front of a room of people with open arms who have no judgment against you, and shake, have your hands shake and your voice shake, and maybe you mess up a few words, but all of a sudden, once you pass that threshold, you're there. So it's an amazing thing. And I do love this quote that I put into the production worksheet, which is you do one thing every day that scares you. And I think that is such it does say anonymous. I won't take credit for it because I do know that there are many people out there that say it, but I think it is so true. Fear is an incredible motivator because it's what kept us safe when we were running from predators. When we were trying to protect ourselves from natural disasters, it's instinctually, it is built into our psyche.
Yes. And
so fear is not a bad thing. But in today's age, fear can be a barrier if you allow it to be. And it is 100% a choice.
Well, fear's not a bad thing.
Yep.
It's not always a good thing.
That's right.
And it's funny. I've always said that people fear public speaking more than they fear death. That's because after a bad talk, you have to live it down.
Right.
But and relive it. But
or until you give another talk. See, you have to give enough out there so that people forget.
That's exactly the point. I mean, they say this in baseball, a baseball closer, the guy who comes in and pitches to finish off the game. Sometimes you're going to be on, sometimes you're not going to be. But I'll tell you what, you get roughed up in the ninth inning and lose a ball game, you still have a responsibility to go out there the next night. And you've got a responsibility to have a short memory. Mm-hmm. Fear's it can be a real motivator. It's more demotivating sometimes. And I think what we have to do is realize that we've evolved past most of the reasons for this kind of primordial fear.
Right.
You think about the way our brains have been structured and wired through evolution, right? And from a very primitive space where that fight or flight reflex or response comes from, there are things that we are naturally intrigued by and naturally frightened by that we no longer have to be frightened of. There's no saber-toothed tiger anymore. Right. And every once in a while, you're on safari, and you kind of tap into that, which is actually part of the fun. And how many people go to horror movies and thrill rides and theme parks and everything to tap into it? So there's very clearly a lot of power in it, but I think sometimes we give it more power than it deserves. And we talk about, especially at a Toastmasters meeting, right? Logically, we think that everybody in this room is here for the same purpose. We've all got the same goal. We've all got a responsibility to each other to help ourselves and each other get over this fear, to perfect and practice a craft, but we're still terrified. There is no more safer environment to give that particular speech or to work on those skills. And we're still terrified. Logically, it doesn't make any sense to be that afraid. And I think that's where we have to give ourselves a little credit for evolving to the point where, one, we can recognize that, and then two, we can take a step through and work on it.
So, we identified several different types of fear when we were talking about, when we were prepping for this podcast. Some of the ones that we wrote down on paper were fear of failure or fear of non-action. And then there's also the opposite side of that, which is fear of success and fear of action. Anything that comes to mind in particular when you think about the types of fear that people seem to gravitate towards or that you've experienced?
The first thing that comes to mind is that we all get very safe and warm and cozy in our routines. And I believe that anybody's biggest competitor, I don't care what industry you work in, I don't care what company you work for, what product you sell, your biggest competitor is the status quo. And people are so resistant to change because we get in our little cocoons and our bubbles, and this is nice. I hate it, but at least it's comfortable in that I know it. It takes a lot to step outside that, and all growth happens outside of the comfort zone. And so I guess that's probably my biggest remark when it comes to fear, because all of those things, fear of, well, what happens if I do it? What happens if I don't do it? What happens if I fail? Oh my gosh, what happens if I succeed?
Oh yeah, right. Exactly.
All of that is outside of the comfort zone. And those are the conversations that I believe we need to just get to work and go through.
Sure.
It's, well, I don't know how much this should cost, and I don't know how much I should discount, and I don't know what's going to happen if I do this. Okay, but wait a second. We're having this conversation because somewhere in your internal thinking, you thought that this project was going to be worth doing. Is it worth doing? Yes, but no. Eliminate the but. Let's go. Let's get to work.
Right. Absolutely. Well, and I also find too, and perhaps the people like this gravitate to me because I am like this. I find that I have a lot of clients that have a fear of not knowing enough. I've always talked about, you don't have to be a know-it-all, right? You don't have to know it all, period. I am a know-it-all. I admit it freely and here for all to hear, right? But I feel like I need just a little bit more information. I need a little bit more education. In my career, I always equated that with another certificate or a degree or, some sort of irrefutable evidence that I know what I'm talking about, right? So I have a very distinct fear of being found out, that someone might figure out that I'm not all that.
It's called imposter syndrome.
It is called imposter syndrome. That's right. And it is such a real issue for overachievers. And I think I find more clients now than I ever anticipated that have that problem. And I'm sure you've experienced the same.
Just for a second there, I thought you were working with my clients. Which immediately brings to mind, there's a book that came out a couple of years ago from one of my personal heroes, Seth Godin, who put out a book, as he does on a regular basis, which is essentially a compendium of not all of, but some selected articles that he writes. He writes a blog every day. Some of those blogs are 1,500 words. Some of them are 15 words. But the book that he put out was entitled, "What You Gonna Do with That Duck?" And you said, what is this all about? And on the first page, you turn to it and it says, paraphrasing, but it says something to the effect of, having all of your ducks in a row is a really fine thing. But what's more important is what you're going to do next. And I think there are a lot of us in sales who we know, maybe because they listened to our podcast a couple of episodes.
Oh, well, there you go.
That you need to be prepared.
Those in the know, of course.
Yes. You need to be prepared. There's no excuse for walking in unprepared. I don't care how good you are. Don't wing it. If you're going to wing it, at least wing it within the realm of what is going to be most impactful, right?
That's right.
But preparation can become a crutch.
Yep.
Preparation can become that thing that you always know that you don't know it all.
Yeah.
So you need to keep going. But here's the thing. At some point, you got to act.
Yep.
At some point, you've done enough preparation and you have to stop getting ready to get ready.
Yep.
And you need to go. And that is the difference between confidence and belief.
Yep.
And it comes up with everybody I work with, Christy, and clearly it does with you. And with so much riding on the line and so many people in sales, I mean, I might be type A-ish, I mean, it's you want to get it right.
Right.
I'm judged by my performance, and my performance is judged by these particular measures, and I'm going to get this right. And in order to try to get it right as many times as possible, because there's so much riding on it, we forget that getting it wrong sometimes is also tremendously valuable.
Right. Absolutely, because you're learning every time. In fact, I had an interesting discussion yesterday with our financial advisor, and one of the things that we talked about, and obviously we're reviewing things with the business, the things with personal finances as well, and
sure.
And he told a story about having a conversation with his dad, where he was, he felt like he'd made a major mistake, and, it cost him a lot of money, and, he'd invested in the wrong thing. And he's like, Dad, I just really messed things up. And he said, did you learn anything from this experience? And he goes, oh yeah, I'll never do this. I'll never do that. I'll never do this. And he goes, well, I guess that was a very expensive education. So It cost you less than a degree probably. So go for it. So, brush yourself off, deal with it, move on.
Well, I mean, how many times have you worked with a client and they say, well, I've had this conversation. What's the best way for me to follow up with this person? I just had a great conversation. And I said, well, how did they tell you to follow up with them? Then over the phone, you can hear their face hitting their forehead, or I'm sorry, their palm hitting themselves in the face on the forehead. And it's like, I should have asked that, shouldn't I?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I said, well, but you know what? You'll never make that mistake again.
Right.
You're going to look every day. You're going to look in the mirror and you're going to have this red face, face palm print, right? I mean, it figuratively, obviously. And you're going to remember that. It's going to be indelible. And the best part about making a mistake, if you really make a good one, is that you'll never make it again.
Yeah.
And there's so much in there in terms of guidance and personal development and growth when it comes to that stuff. Failure is okay. I tell my clients, please go fail.
Yeah.
And you look at me and I say, okay, now that I have your attention, let me say that again. Please go fail.
Mm-hmm. And that's true for individuals and companies. And I think companies have to do that sometimes too, where you really have to You have to approach a program or a product or, whatever it may be with gusto. And sometimes if you're innovative enough, you're going to fail, right? That's the idea.
Right.
You're going to get better the next time.
Right.
So, I want to kind of turn the table a little bit, and this is a little bit off of our production notes, but
You know how I feel about improv.
Off of our production notes, I promise. But one of the things, and my favorite quote from Moneyball, which actually had nothing to do with our data analytics discussion that we had, but the very first page of that book, they have a quote at the intro of the first chapter, and it says, the title of the chapter is "The Curse of Talent." And the quote is, "Whom the gods wish to destroy, they first call promising." And of course, in Moneyball, that is very much the story behind Billy Beane's, rise to fame as a high school player, and then, challenges when he was in the major leagues, and just his motivation and the like. But one of the things, the reason I wanted to bring that up is I have this book called "Ego is the Enemy."
Okay.
And I listened to a podcast, and again, I cannot remember. I need to start documenting when I go and find these books, what podcast I was listening to when I did. It's either The Art of Charm or it might have been Seth Godin. And they were interviewing this guy by the name of Ryan Holiday. And he was a meteoric rise in his 20s. He rose to kind of head of sales and operations for a very powerful retailer. That did a lot of great things. Had written 2 or 3 books before 30, and had some rather spectacular falls from grace too. Okay. So what happens a lot of times for people like you and I who have been in our careers for say 20, 25 years or so, I think you're a little younger than I am, but bear with me. Okay. But I think that what happens is that, we started off, we're overachievers by nature anyway. So in the early years of our career, we were gangbusters, right? So you're hitting all your milestones. You're just, you're cruising along. You're doing all the great things. And then you move to that next level. And all of a sudden you're not king of the hill or queen of the hill anymore, right? And that fear of, oh my God, I'll never get back there, really hits home. And the same thing happens. And I think you and I both went through this in our businesses. I went from managing fairly sizable sales and marketing teams, and working for, multi-million dollar manufacturing companies, to being a solopreneur and really kind of breaking out into a completely different avenue of what I did. It just happened to be the portion of my business that I love the most. Everything that I've done over the years has really driven me to coach and teach. But that fear of, oh my God, I'm not gonna make this work is crippling. Yep. And so, I mean, I'd love your perspective just on, that fear that really comes from, I've already been there. I've done the championship run. I've had successes that, countless successes before, but now I'm afraid I'm not going to get there again. Right.
I wrote about this recently.
Yeah.
Why does everybody know you're a freaking rock star except for you?
Yeah.
This is the part where we have to evolve. This is the part where we have to give ourselves credit for already having evolved.
Yeah.
This is the lizard brain. Steve Pressfield calls it that in The War of Art. This is just a tremendous little book. He calls the lizard, Seth Godin calls it the lizard brain. Steve Pressfield calls the lizard brain the resistance, and I think it's a better name for it. It's referred to as a proper name with capital.
Lizard brain, croc brain, weren't we?
We talked about the croc brain.
Pitch anyway. Yeah, yes. Right.
All talking about the same thing, and that's that fear. That's that little gnawing in the back of your head, and the amygdala is actually in the back of your head. So there's some truth to that. This is new. I've never done it before. It's exciting because I've never done it before. But then that other part of your personality comes through and says, then I should be afraid of it. And rationally, We know that the buying signals are there. Rationally, we know we've succeeded at everything we've ever done. However, rationally, we think back to managers who were promoted a level and then fired 6 months later because of the Peter principle, right?
Right.
Being promoted to the point of your own ineptitude.
That's right. Your own incompetence, right?
Incompetence. Just promote me to my own level of incompetence and get me out. And people that's been done on purpose to get people out of the business before, right? And I mean, it's there's so many things that we can talk ourselves into because we're very intelligent people. Salespeople are very, very intelligent. You have to be.
Yeah.
And you can talk yourselves into and out of anything because salespeople are inherently persuasive too. Mm-hmm. So we have to keep in mind the reasons that we've arrived where we have. And, you and I talked about this just the other day. I think we both feel like we were born to do what we're doing right now.
Right.
Because it's that particular place where, I feel strongly about what I do and I've got the experience to back it up. You do the same. And we also have a passion for helping other people do this. But you know what that comes along with is, not everybody likes me.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that, right? I'm going to go out and I'm going to make a presentation and I may have 20 people in the room and 10 may love me and 10 may hate me. You know what? I think I've got it right.
Yeah.
If that's the case. But at the same time, we get back to what we were just talking about a couple of minutes ago and that, I'm judged by my numbers. So if I can try to please everybody, and you can't do that. And you're that fear of just kind of stepping outside. And that quote that you just, to whom the gods mean to destroy, they first call promising.
I know. Isn't that powerful?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's kind of one of those, that's going to stick with me for a little while. I tell you, I'm really thanking you for making me go back and read that book. I was thumbs up on that one. Hey, so I want to read you another passage though. This comes from The Ego is the Enemy. And I want to tie this concept of ego to fear because I think that there's a lot of overlap here.
Oh, they're inextricably linked.
Especially when you're talking about salespeople, right?
Yes.
So this is just a very short little quote, but it says, many of us insist the main impediment to a full successful life is the outside world. In fact, the most common enemy lies within our ego. Early in our careers, it impedes learning and the cultivation of talent. With success, it blinds us to our faults and so future problems. In failure, it magnifies, this is the important one, it magnifies each blow, however ill-perceived, and makes recovery more difficult. At every stage, ego holds us back.
So this might not work is terrifying.
Yes.
The flip side to this might not work is it may be perfect.
Yeah.
And dancing on that edge. And that's where, and this is where it's helpful that Seth Godin shows up in my inbox every morning, sometime around 6 a.m., that there's always something along those lines. There's always, if he's done nothing else, he's been supportive for those people who are on the edge.
Yeah.
And, the closer you get to the edge, the higher your risk, the higher your reward. But if you try to please everybody, you're going to thrill nobody.
Right.
And we're here to thrill.
Yeah. And that is that feeling in your gut when you nailed it.
Yep.
That's what that's all about.
And that's where we get that. And I talk about this. I write about this swagger, that feeling in your belly.
My daughter loves that word.
Oh, it's such a great word. There's way more to come on that, but that's the thing. You try to please everybody and you may please a lot of people. You're never going to please them all, but you feel pretty good. You step out there on a limb a little bit and you knock it out of the park and you feel amazing. Mm-hmm. And you step out on that same limb or maybe a similar one and you swing and miss, you don't feel great. But you know what?
Yeah.
When you feel bad for missing, the amplitude of that feeling is nowhere near as big as when you feel amazing. You got to fail 3 or 4 times in order to kind of, quantify that same feeling the same way it feels to absolutely knock one out of the park.
Yeah, you bet.
And it's so special. And so many people are afraid to tempt that because we're taught from an early age. And think about it, even in school, we're taught in school just to get everything right. Mm-hmm. We're not taught to learn. We learn things the way that they're taught so we can get everything right on the test. It's like the worst question in the world is when someone in the back of the room raises their hand and says, is this going to be on the test? Well, no. Yeah. Well, great. I can tune out now. I mean, and I'm not going to lie. I got through some courses in college that I wasn't particularly interested in because I knew how to take the test. But what are we here to do? And I try to teach my kids, go and skin your knee, fall off your bike, do something. Look, if it's going to be dangerous, I'm going to tell you that's going to be dangerous, but go get some things wrong. You think it's done this way? Okay. Have a discussion with your teacher. If you think that she asked a bad question or whatever it is, ask them, learn something.
Yeah.
That's in this podcast is called The Why and the Buy. If you can ask why that question was asked in that way, you're going to learn more than just going to the back of the book and looking in the math, in the appendix in the math section for the right answer and then writing it down.
That's exactly right.
What are we trying to do?
That's right. That's right. So, we've got just a few more minutes here. I want to talk a little bit about the good side of fear.
Oh, please.
So we've talked about several different types of fear here, but fear is, as we said in the beginning, it's an incredible motivator. It's an incredible focuser. And for me, fear of not being prepared makes me over prepare to the nth degree. And I've learned, thankfully, over the years to mitigate that and be comfortable not knowing everything. And it makes me much more comfortable in meetings as a result. So all of my know-it-alls out there, sometimes not knowing is a bigger comfort than knowing and trying to always show that you know. And it's a lot easier to focus on the customer than on showing that you know your stuff. Not just as a quick sidebar too, when you really don't know something, to authentically and genuinely say, we should work on tackling that together. Yeah. That's a great question. It's a great problem to be able to find solutions for. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I know it all. I think I know a lot of things, but I don't know it all. Now, all of a sudden, there's a certain amount of vulnerability there that makes you that much more connectable, if that's the word. I don't like to associate with robots. I don't, so there's a lot of power there, but I don't want to derail you too far. Go ahead. Yeah, no, that's my biggest, that's what I see as the good side of fear is that it focuses me in a way that nothing else can. So what about you? What do you think from a good side of fear perspective? I think that the presence of fear or the presence of the resistance, if you will, reminds me that I'm on the right track. Yeah. I think that as soon as that's gone, as soon as I'm totally operating in my comfort zone, I know I'm not growing anymore. I don't know if there's ever going to be a day when I don't want to grow. I hope there isn't. Yeah. But at this point, there's a new challenge. Do you think that you can take this on? Yeah, I think I can. All right. Well, it's not going to be easy, but it requires me to grow. Here's this new opportunity that comes along. Wow. If I think about it logically, there's probably a way I can make it work without giving up on my priorities and my stated goals in my life, right? I'm not going to take on a project just because I can do it if it means it's at the expense of my family or what I want to do. It's more important to me to be a husband and a father than it is to be a sales guy, right? So if it's not at the expense of what's at the core of my values, I'll take a hard look at it. And if it means that it's going to be hard, then I'm likely to take that on. Yeah. The fear is kind of my indicator. And what I've noticed is that I'm afraid of a lot less. Thing, right? So that's how I use fear as a positive. Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're almost at 30 minutes, so I think we'll probably wrap it up from here. I think my closing statements on fear is that you have to face it. As I mentioned, I go through an exercise with my clients on a regular basis where I make them name that fear. They really, really get it down on paper, understand exactly what it is that's giving you pause, and then visualize the worst case scenario, right? So what's the worst thing that could happen and how long will that last? And all of a sudden it just like a balloon, just, deflating, right? It just does, it does the trick. So
you find out that the monster in the closet is Sully.
Yes.
And who doesn't want to just give Sully a big hug, right?
That's right.
I'm with you. I think that when you think about fear, when you consider what you're really afraid of, when you name it, it's powerful. It's powerful for you to name it because it takes power away from the fear. It's powerful for you to analyze what is really going on. What is the purpose of that fear? Is this really a fear to keep me safe? And in each individual case, is safe where I want to be?
Yes. I think that's a great question. It's an awesome question.
Safe is the new risky.
Yeah.
Right. Safe is where the middle is, where everybody kind of convenes in the middle. Safe is where average lies.
Right.
And I'm not interested in being average. And I will be average at something for a while, so long as I know I'm getting better and leveling up, like I say, to the point where I'm no longer average. And the fear then should be of being average, not of wondering about whether or not you're going to fail. And if you can really think about why safety is where you want to be and why fear, what's at the other side of that fear?
Yeah.
What are you going to work through in order to get to a place where you're comfortable with it?
That's right. That's right. The exact opposite of that exercise is visualize what the best possible outcome would be.
Right.
And then how permanent is that?
Right.
So there's a lot more we could talk about with fear. I think we're out of time at this point, but Jeff, what are we talking about next time? Or do you have an idea on what we talk about next time?
I have lots of ideas.
Of course.
I don't know what we're going to talk about next time, but
okay.
I know
then it will be a surprise.
It's going to be a surprise to all of us. I know we're going to talk next time. I've got some ideas. Actually, we've talked about this recently too. What we're going to talk about next time is really going to be determined by which guest is going to be available.
Yes.
So we've got some guests lined up. We've got some people that we want to talk about. I want to talk more about fear. I want to talk more about swagger. I want to talk more about attitude. I want to talk about the benefits of being an accidental salesperson. And I want to also talk about patience. Patience is kind of a counterintuitive word when it comes to sales, because we all have targets. We all have deadlines. We all have bogeys to hit, so to speak. And I think when you start with something counterintuitive, that might be the place you should look first.
Yeah.
I think it's a differentiator. And if you're thinking, if when they call it heresy, that's when you might be onto something. And, as it relates to fear, I think we have to think again about why are we afraid and why do we want to be comfortable?
That's it. Well, I think that's a great way to end it. Thank you, everyone, for listening to the Why and the Buy podcast. And remember, when you understand your whys, your hows and your whats become much better. So, absolutely. Jeff, thank you so much for your time. And we look forward to seeing everyone next time.
Thanks, Christy. Let's do it again soon.
You bet.
You go searching for something better than what you had. It's just because you're looking.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Why and the Buy podcast. If you liked us, subscribe. We can be found on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, SoundCloud, and really anywhere else you can get a podcast. And if you really liked us, then give us a 5-star review. We like those, and we like you too. Here at the Why and the Buy podcast, we've got our own house band. Christy and I think they're absolutely perfect for what we're trying to do with this podcast, and we hope you think so too. If you like them as much as we do, then you should check them out. They're called Haskins, and they're based in southeastern Michigan. You can find their music and more at haskinsmusic.com. Go check them out.